The evening air held a slight chill as Mei Lin adjusted her black uniform one last time before entering through the staff door of the Crystal Room. The restaurant sat on the top floor of the city's tallest building, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered views that made even the wealthiest guests pause in appreciation. Not that Mei had much time to enjoy those views. 6 years of working here had taught her to keep her eyes down and her movements quick. "You're cutting it close," whispered Thomas, the head waiter, as Mei slipped into the service area. His stern face softened slightly. "Table 8 is yours tonight." The Chen party. Mei's stomach tightened. Everyone knew about tonight's special guest, Anthony Chen, the tech billionaire whose face graced magazine covers and whose name appeared in business news almost daily. Word had spread through the staff that he was celebrating some huge business deal and had booked the entire west wing of the restaurant. "How many guests?" Mei asked, quickly tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. 25 at least. All high profile. The kitchen's been prepping since dawn." Thomas handed her a tablet with the evening's special menu. "No mistakes tonight, got it?" Mei nodded, scanning the custom dishes and rare wine pairings that cost more than her monthly rent. She had worked countless VIP events before, but something about tonight made her unusually nervous. Perhaps it was the rumors that Chen had once fired a personal chef for serving slightly overcooked fish. Or maybe it was the fact that her younger brother's medical bills had come in yesterday, each figure on the paper a reminder of why she couldn't afford to lose this job. The first guest began arriving at 7. Mei moved between the kitchen and dining area with practiced efficiency, her steps quick but never hurried, her smile present but not too familiar. The years had taught her the careful balance: be attentive without being noticed, present without being seen. By 8 o'clock, the party was in full swing. Men in tailored suits and women draped in jewelry worth small fortunes laughed over champagne flutes, their voices creating a constant hum beneath the soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. Through it all, Mei moved like water, filling glasses, removing plates, anticipating needs before they were voiced. She was carrying a tray of empty cocktail glasses back toward the kitchen when she first noticed him watching her. Anthony Chen sat at the center of the longest table, a man in his early 50s with surprisingly kind eyes that contrasted with the sharp lines of his expensive suit. Unlike many wealthy clients who looked through the staff as if they were invisible, his gaze followed her movements with a curious intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Did I do something wrong?" she whispered to Thomas when she reached the service station. He glanced over at Chen's table. "Not that I can tell. Why?" "No reason," Mei said quickly, arranging fresh napkins on her tray. She was being paranoid. People like Chen didn't notice people like her unless there was a problem. As the night progressed, the celebration grew more lively. Someone suggested moving to the lounge area where a grand piano stood near the windows. The restaurant's regular pianist, an older man named Gabriel, who sometimes slipped Mei pastries from the kitchen when no one was looking, began playing soft, elegant pieces as the guests settled into plush sofas with after-dinner drinks. Mei was clearing dessert plates when she heard a commotion from the lounge. Gabriel was standing, clutching his wrist, his face tight with pain. "It's nothing, sir, just an old injury that acts up sometimes," he was saying to Chen, who had risen from his seat. "Nonsense. You can barely move your fingers." "Go have someone look at it," Chen replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. The manager appeared at Gabriel's side, murmuring apologies as he led the pianist away. Mei could see the panic in the manager's eyes. The night was meant to be perfect, and now their entertainment had disappeared halfway through. "Perhaps one of your other staff plays," Chen suggested, looking around the room until his gaze landed on Mei, who was trying to make herself invisible near the service door. The manager followed his gaze. "I don't believe so, Mr. Chen. We can put on some recorded music until—" "Her," Chen interrupted, pointing directly at Mei. "You. Come here." The room fell silent. 25 pairs of eyes turned toward her, and Mei felt her cheeks burn. She approached slowly, tray still in hand, heart pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. "Yes, sir?" she managed, keeping her eyes respectfully lowered. "Those hands of yours," Chen said thoughtfully. "I've been watching them all evening." Confused, Mei glanced down at her hands. They were nothing special, slender, yes, but with short nails and small calluses that no amount of lotion seemed to soften. "The way you've been moving things around, arranging everything just so," Chen continued. "You have musician's hands." Do you play? The question hung in the air. Behind her, May could feel the manager's anxious presence, silently willing her to say whatever would please their important guest. I used to, she admitted quietly. It wasn't something she talked about. Not anymore. Chen's eyebrows rose. The piano? A small nod. Perfect. Chen clapped his hands together once decisively. You'll play for us. It wasn't a request. The manager took the tray from her hands before she could object, giving her a look that clearly said, whatever he wants, make it happen. Sir, I haven't played in years, May protested softly, panic rising in her throat. I couldn't possibly— Nonsense, Chen said, already guiding her toward the piano with a gentle but firm hand on her shoulder. It's like riding a bicycle. The body remembers. The guests watched with interest, some with amusement, others with skepticism. May heard whispers as she passed, felt judging eyes taking in her waitress uniform, her sensible shoes, her hands that had spent the evening carrying their dirty plates. The piano bench felt foreign beneath her as she sat down. The gleaming black grand piano before her was far nicer than the old upright she had learned on as a child. Certainly nicer than the keyboard she had practiced on during music school before life had forced her to drop out and find real work. What would you like to hear, Mr. Chen? She asked, hoping her voice didn't betray her fear. He shrugged, settling back into his seat. Surprise me. May's hands hovered above the keys, trembling slightly. 8 years. It had been 8 years since she'd performed for anyone. 8 years of pushing down the ache she felt whenever she passed a music store or heard a beautiful piece on the radio. 8 years of telling herself that dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford, not with her brother's condition and her mother's struggling business. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her fingers found the opening notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune, the last piece she had mastered before selling her keyboard to help pay rent. The first few notes came out hesitantly, her fingers stiff and unpracticed. Someone whispered. Someone else laughed softly. Heat crawled up her neck, but then something shifted. Her hands remembered. Her body relaxed. The music began to flow tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. The gentle, dreamy notes filled the room, floating above the city lights twinkling below. May kept her eyes closed, afraid to break whatever spell had allowed her to remember. The piece had always felt to her like moonlight on water, delicate, mysterious, beautiful in its simplicity. As she played, the years of serving others, of putting her own dreams aside, seemed to melt away. When the final notes faded, May opened her eyes, suddenly aware of the complete silence that had fallen over the room. No whispers, no clinks of glasses, no polite conversation, just silence. Then Chen began to applaud, a slow, deliberate clapping that was quickly joined by the rest of the guests. Some were leaning forward in their seats, others exchanging surprised glances. Extraordinary, Chen said, his eyes fixed on May with new interest. Absolutely extraordinary. And you say you haven't played in years? May stood quickly, embarrassment replacing the brief moment of joy she had felt. I should get back to work, sir. No. Play something else, Chen insisted. Something with more fire this time. Behind him, May could see her manager nodding enthusiastically. His expression was a mixture of relief and calculation. Chen was happy, which meant the evening was saved, which meant potential future bookings from the billionaire and his wealthy friends. Just one more piece, Chen pressed when she hesitated. Please. It was the please that surprised her. People like him rarely said please to people like her. Slowly, May sat back down. This time, she chose Chopin's Fantaisie Impromptu, a challenging piece that had once been her showcase piece at school. It required speed and precision, light, rapid fingerwork that used to make her teacher smile and say she had hummingbird hands. The opening notes burst forth, fast and intense. May stumbled once, twice, her muscle memory fighting against years of disuse. But then, like a language once fluently spoken, it came back to her. Her fingers flew across the keys, drawing gasps from some of the guests as the difficult passages poured out with increasing confidence. When she finished, the applause was immediate and genuine. Chen was standing now, his expression no longer merely curious but excited. Who are you? He asked as May rose again, her heart pounding from exertion and emotion.
Really? Where did you study?
May smoothed down her uniform, suddenly very aware of the contrast between her current reality and the path she had once imagined for herself. The National Conservatory, she answered quietly. For 2 years. I had to leave in my 3rd year. And now you're here serving drinks, Chen mused, more to himself than to her. He shook his head slowly. What an extraordinary waste. The words stung, though May knew he hadn't meant them unkindly. Still, what did he know of necessity, of compromise, of choosing family over passion? Life happens, Mr. Chen, she replied, surprising herself with her boldness. Music doesn't pay medical bills. May stood frozen as Chen's words hung in the air. Music doesn't pay medical bills. She hadn't meant to be so blunt with a man who could get her fired with a snap of his fingers, but something about sitting at that piano again had awakened a part of her she'd kept buried for so long. I should get back to work, she said, trying to step away from the piano. Wait. Chen pulled a business card from his pocket and held it out to her. Call my office tomorrow. My assistant will arrange for you to audition for our Foundation's arts program. May took the card automatically, her fingers barely registering the heavy, textured paper. Audition? We sponsor promising musicians, Chen explained, his voice matter-of-fact. Provide stipends, arrange performances, help with career development. He glanced at the piano. Clearly you qualify. Before May could respond, a woman in a shimmering blue dress appeared at Chen's side, linking her arm through his. Tony, you simply must meet Philip's new partner. He's revolutionizing virtual reality gaming. Chen allowed himself to be pulled away, but called over his shoulder, Tomorrow, Mei Lin, don't disappoint me. The manager materialized beside her immediately, his expression a mix of awe and calculation. Whatever you did, keep doing it, he whispered. Mr. Chen's party has already booked 3 more events with us. He patted her shoulder. Take 15 minutes to collect yourself, then back to work. Table 12 needs dessert menus. Just like that, she was a waitress again. The moment of magic dissolved, replaced by the familiar rhythm of service. Yet as May moved through the rest of her shift, something had changed. Guests who had seen her play looked at her differently now, some with new respect, others with curiosity, a few with the uncomfortable realization that the invisible people who served them might have depths they'd never considered. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. When her shift finally ended at 1 a.m., May found herself standing outside the restaurant, Chen's business card still clutched in her hand. The night air was cool against her face as she stared at the embossed lettering, the glossy finish catching the streetlight. The bus ride home was quiet, the late hour meaning few passengers. May sat by the window, watching the city scroll by as it transitioned from the gleaming financial district to her more modest neighborhood. Streetlights grew farther apart, buildings shorter and older. By the time she reached her stop, the sidewalks were dark and mostly empty. The apartment she shared with her brother was on the 3rd floor of an aging building with no elevator. May climbed the stairs quietly, mindful of neighbors who would be sleeping. When she unlocked the door, she was surprised to find the living room light still on, her younger brother Kai sitting on their worn couch with textbooks spread around him. You're still up? She asked, setting down her bag. It's almost 2. Kai looked up, dark circles under his eyes. At 19, he should have been out with friends or sleeping soundly, not studying until the early hours, but his heart condition and the mounting medical bills had made him serious beyond his years. Big test tomorrow, he explained, pushing his glasses up. How was work? May hesitated, then pulled out Chen's business card. Different. Kai listened, eyes widening as she recounted the evening's events. When she finished, he leaned back against the couch cushions. Wow. So Anthony Chen, the Anthony Chen, wants you to audition for his foundation? He shook his head in disbelief. That's huge, May. His arts foundation sponsors some of the best musicians in the country. How do you know that? Kai gave her a look. Unlike some people, I actually read the news. He picked up the business card, examining it. You have to call. May took the card back, setting it on their small kitchen counter. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, Kai insisted, shutting his textbook. You call, you audition, you get sponsored, you become a famous pianist, easy. And who takes care of you? May asked quietly. Who works to pay the rent, the bills, your medication? She shook her head. I can't just chase dreams. Not now. Kai's face fell, the familiar mix of guilt and frustration settling over his features. I never asked you to give up everything for me. You didn't have to ask. May softened her tone, sitting beside him on the couch. You're my brother. Family comes first. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken sacrifices filling the small apartment. Finally, Kai spoke again, his voice determined. At least call. See what it is, maybe. Maybe it's something you could do part-time. May didn't answer, but she didn't throw the card away either. Morning came too quickly. May woke to sunlight filtering through the thin curtains and the sound of Kai moving around in the kitchen. Her body ached from yesterday's double shift, but her mind was surprisingly alert, fingers twitching slightly as if still feeling the smooth keys of the grand piano. "Made you coffee," Kai called as she emerged from her bedroom, hair damp from a quick shower. "And I left Chen's card by your phone." May eyed the card as she accepted the mug of coffee. Subtle. Kai grinned, shouldering his backpack. "I have to get to class. Promise me you'll at least think about calling?" "I'll think about it," she conceded. It was easier than arguing. After he left, May sat at their small kitchen table, staring at the business card while nursing her coffee. The rational part of her brain listed all the reasons why pursuing this was foolish. She needed stable income, not dreams. She was years out of practice. The music world was brutally competitive. Chen might have just been showing off to his guests by discovering her. Yet another part of her, a part she thought had died years ago when she sold her keyboard, whispered of possibilities. What if this was real? What if music could be more than just a painful memory? At 9:30, before she could talk herself out of it, May picked up her phone and dialed the number on the card. "Chen Innovations." A crisp voice answered. "How may I direct your call?" "My name is Mei Lin. Mr. Chen asked me to call about his arts foundation." The words felt strange leaving her mouth, as if she were playing a role in someone else's life. "Ah, Ms. Lin, Mr. Chen mentioned you would be calling. One moment, please." The line clicked, and suddenly May was speaking to a woman who introduced herself as Diane, the director of the Chen Arts Foundation. The conversation was brief and efficient. An audition had been arranged for tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. at the Chen Tower downtown. May would need to prepare 3 pieces that showcased different styles and technical abilities. A car would be sent to pick her up. "But I work tomorrow," May protested weakly. "Mr. Chen has already spoken with your employer," Diane replied smoothly. "You've been given the day off. With pay." After hanging up, May sat stunned. The audition was real. Chen had gone so far as to arrange for her time off. This wasn't just a wealthy man's passing whim. Panic set in almost immediately. 3 pieces. Different styles? She hadn't seriously practiced in years. Her fingers were server strong but musician rusty, and where would she even practice? Their apartment had no piano, not even a keyboard. As if reading her thoughts, her phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. "Practice room reserved for you today at Downtown Music Center, 11 a.m. 5 p.m. Address below. Anthony Chen." May stared at the message. How had he gotten her number? Then she remembered. She'd left it with Diane just moments ago. The man moved fast, almost frighteningly so. Downtown Music Center was a 40-minute bus ride away. May changed quickly into jeans and a simple blouse, tied her hair back and grabbed her worn shoulder bag. As she headed for the door, her eyes fell on a dusty photo frame on the bookshelf, herself at 18, standing proudly next to a piano after her conservatory entrance recital, her parents beaming on either side of her. Her father had died just 3 months later. Her mother had followed 2 years after that, leaving May to care for Kai and their mounting debts alone. "I'm just going to practice," she told the photo firmly. "That's all. Nothing will change." But as she caught her reflection in the hallway mirror, May saw something in her eyes that had been missing for a long time. A spark, a light, a possibility. Despite her best efforts to stay practical, hope had found its way back into her heart. The Downtown Music Center turned out to be an imposing building of glass and concrete, far more upscale than anywhere May normally went. At the reception desk, she gave her name hesitantly, half expecting to be turned away. Instead, the receptionist smiled warmly. "Ms. Lin, we've been expecting you. Practice room 7 has been reserved for your exclusive use today." She handed May a key card. "It's our best room. It has a Steinway concert grand." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Mr. Chen's foundation is one of our biggest donors." The practice room was larger than May's entire living room, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a small garden. In the center sat a gleaming black Steinway piano that made her heart skip a beat. She approached it almost reverently, running her fingers lightly over the polished surface before sitting down on the bench. The first hour was frustrating. Her fingers felt clumsy, hitting wrong notes, struggling with passages that had once been second nature. Scales that should have flowed felt jagged and uneven. By the second hour, tears of frustration pricked at her eyes. She was fooling herself. 8 years away from serious practice couldn't be overcome in a day. Yet she didn't stop. Something drove her forward. Perhaps Chen's belief in her, or Kai's excitement, or simply the memory of how it felt to lose herself in music again after so long. Slowly, painfully, her hands began to remember. By the third hour, the Debussy piece she had played for Chen was flowing more naturally. By the fourth, she had added Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, one of the first pieces she had mastered as a teenager. For the third piece, May chose something different, a Rachmaninoff prelude she had been working on when she left the conservatory. Technically demanding but emotionally powerful. It was still rough with missed notes and uneven tempos, but the essence was there. As the afternoon light began to fade outside the windows, May finally stopped, her fingers aching, her back stiff from hours of concentration. It wasn't perfect, not even close, but it was more than she had played in years, and something about it felt right in a way that serving drinks to wealthy patrons never had. Her phone buzzed with a text from Kai. "How's it going? Called Chen yet?" May smiled, typing back. "Practicing for audition tomorrow. Don't wait up tonight." His reply came instantly. "What? That's amazing. I knew you'd do it." As she gathered her things to leave, May caught sight of her reflection in the window. The woman looking back at her seemed different somehow, standing straighter, eyes brighter, as if waking from a long sleep. Just an audition, she reminded herself firmly. Nothing will come of it. But even as she said the words, her heart refused to believe them. May barely slept that night. Her fingers twitched against her blanket, playing phantom pianos in her dreams. She woke before her alarm, body tight with nervous energy she hadn't felt since her conservatory days. As promised, a sleek black car arrived at her apartment building precisely at 1:15 p.m. The driver, a kind-faced older man, held the door for her with a respectful nod. May slid into the back seat, immediately feeling out of place among the soft leather and tinted windows. She had spent the morning trying on every outfit she owned before settling on a simple navy blue dress, the nicest thing in her closet, reserved for special occasions. "First time visiting the Chen Tower?" the driver asked, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Yes," May admitted, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her dress. "I'm auditioning for the Arts Foundation." The driver smiled. "Musician? My daughter plays violin in the City Youth Orchestra. Mr. Chen's foundation helps fund it." As they talked, the car wound through increasingly upscale neighborhoods until the Chen Tower came into view, a gleaming spire of glass and steel that dominated the skyline. May's stomach tightened. What was she doing here? Yesterday she had been serving drinks. Today she was being driven to an audition in the city's most prestigious building. The car pulled into an underground parking garage, and the driver escorted her to a private elevator. "Good luck," he said warmly as the doors closed. The elevator rose silently, its digital display blinking through floor numbers until it stopped at 32. When the doors opened, May stepped into a light-filled space where floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the city below. The room was dominated by a magnificent grand piano positioned to catch the afternoon sunlight. Ms. Lin, a poised woman with silver-streaked hair, approached, hand extended. "I'm Diane Wu, director of the Chen Arts Foundation. We spoke on the phone." May shook her hand, hoping her palm wasn't sweaty. "Thank you for arranging everything so quickly. Mr. Chen is quite decisive when he discovers talent," Diane replied with a small smile. "The practice room suited your needs yesterday?" "It was perfect," May said. "I can't thank you enough for—" Here she is." Anthony Chen's voice cut through their conversation as he strode into the room, followed by 2 other people. "Our pianist." May's heart sank as she realized this wouldn't be a private audition. Chen introduced his companions, a stern-looking woman named Dr. Vivian Lee, head of piano studies at the National Conservatory, and a tall man with keen eyes introduced as Roberto Vasquez, artistic director for the City Symphony. "We're all eager to hear you play," Chen said, gesturing toward the piano as the others took seats in a small arrangement of chairs. "Whenever you're ready." May approached the piano, her legs feeling strangely disconnected from her body. This instrument was even finer than the one at the restaurant, its surface gleaming like black ice. She sat, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the cool keys. A heavy silence filled the room. May closed her eyes, trying to center herself. "I don't belong here," a voice whispered in her mind. "These people will see through me in seconds." She opened her eyes and saw Diane give her an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, May began to play. She started with the Debussy piece, the familiar notes of Clair de Lune filling the space. Her fingers found the keys with more confidence than yesterday, the hours of practice having awakened old muscle memories. As she played, the world around her faded. The intimidating room, the important people watching her, even her own doubts. There was only the music, flowing from her hands like water. When she finished, she moved directly into the Chopin Nocturne without pause, not wanting to break the spell or give herself time to think. The piece was gentler, more introspective, allowing her to showcase a different kind of touch. She felt herself relaxing into the music, letting it speak through her. The final piece, Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, was the most challenging. May had struggled with it during practice, and even now her fingers stumbled in places. But she pushed through, the powerful chords and running passages demanding everything she had. When she struck the final notes, she was breathing hard as if she'd been running. Silence filled the room again. May kept her eyes on the keys, afraid to look up and see disappointment on their faces. "Well," Chen said finally, breaking the silence, "I certainly wasn't wrong." Dr. Li leaned forward in her chair. "You studied at the conservatory? Under whom?" "Professor Huang," May answered. "For 2.5 years?" I remember now," Dr. Li said, eyes narrowing slightly. "You were on scholarship. Left suddenly in your 3rd year?" May nodded, heat rising to her face. "My father died. I had to support my family." "And you haven't played seriously since then?" Roberto asked, his expression unreadable. "No," May admitted. "Not until last night." The 3 evaluators exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Dr. Li spoke again. "Your technique is understandably rusty. The Rachmaninoff in particular needs significant work. But your musicality—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "It's rare. Even after years away from serious study, you have something many technically perfect students lack, an authentic voice." Roberto nodded in agreement. "With proper training and practice, you could recover what you've lost and build upon your foundation. The question is whether you're willing to put in the work." May felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. "I am." Chen clapped his hands together once decisively. "That settles it. We'd like to offer you a place in our Foundation's Performance Development Program." Diane stepped forward with a folder. The program provides a monthly stipend, weekly private lessons with Dr. Li, practice facilities, performance opportunities, and eventually, career placement assistance. "In return, we ask for your full commitment." "Full commitment?" May repeated. "You would need to leave your restaurant job," Chen clarified. "This is a full-time program designed to prepare musicians for professional careers." The spark of hope flickered. "I can't quit my job. My brother—" "The stipend is generous," Diane interrupted gently, handing May the folder. "More than enough to cover reasonable living expenses for 2 people. May opened the folder and nearly gasped when she saw the figure. It was indeed more than she made at the restaurant, even including tips. But still, what if it doesn't work out? She asked quietly. What if after all this investment I'm not good enough? Dr. Li's expression softened slightly. That's always the risk in arts careers, but based on what I heard today, I believe you have the potential to succeed. Roberto added, the program is initially for 1 year. After that, if all parties feel it's beneficial to continue, the contract can be renewed. Chen watched May carefully. You're worried about security. I understand that. But consider this, you're currently a waitress. That job will always be there if you need to go back to it. But this opportunity? This chance? It won't come again. His words hung in the air. May thought about Kai, about their parents, about the years of putting practical concerns ahead of dreams. She thought about the feeling she'd experienced at the piano yesterday, the sense of coming home after a long absence. May I have some time to think about it? She asked finally. To discuss it with my brother? Of course, Diane said before Chen could respond. Take the contract home, review it carefully. We'll need your answer by Monday. The same car that had brought her took May home, the contract folder clutched tightly in her hands. Her mind raced with possibilities and fears. Could she really do this? Return to music after so long away? And what if she failed? What if this was just setting herself up for another heartbreak? When she arrived home, Kai was already there, practically bouncing with excitement. How did it go? Tell me everything. May recounted the audition, watching her brother's eyes widen when she mentioned the impressive panel and the offer they'd made. This is incredible, Kai exclaimed when she showed him the stipend amount. You have to take it. It's not that simple, May said, sinking onto their worn couch. If I quit my job and this doesn't work out, then you get another job, Kai interrupted. Look, I know you've been taking care of me since Mom died. I know you gave up everything for me and my stupid heart condition. His voice cracked slightly. But I'm not a kid anymore. I'm 19 in college getting better. You can't keep using me as an excuse to not live your life. That's not fair, May protested. But the words hit closer to home than she wanted to admit. Kai sat beside her. Remember what Dad always said? Music isn't just what you do, it's who you are. He would be so proud to see you getting this chance. May felt tears prick at her eyes. What if I've been away from it too long? What if I can't catch up? Then at least you tried, Kai said simply. Isn't trying better than always wondering what might have been? They stayed up late into the night, going over the contract details, calculating expenses, weighing pros and cons. By the time they finally went to bed, May had almost made up her mind. The next day was Saturday, her usual double shift at the restaurant. As she served drinks and cleared tables, May found herself watching the customers differently, imagining a life where she wasn't invisible to them, where she was the one people came to see and hear. During her break, she called Diane and asked if she could give her answer in person. An hour later, she was back in the Chen Tower, sitting across from Diane in a sleek office. I want to accept the offer, May said, sliding the signed contract across the desk. But I have one condition. Diane raised an eyebrow. Which is? I'd like to keep working at the restaurant one night a week, Saturday evenings. Seeing Diane's surprise, she continued quickly. Not as a server, as a pianist. Playing background music during dinner service. Why? Diane asked, genuinely curious. May thought about it, trying to put her feelings into words. To remember where I started. To keep myself grounded and... She hesitated. To show other people like me that dreams don't have to stay buried. Diane studied her for a long moment, then smiled. I think Mr. Chen will find that quite poetic. Consider it done. As May left the building, stepping into the bright afternoon sunlight, she felt lighter than she had in years. Tomorrow would bring a new set of challenges. Intensive practice, lessons with the intimidating Dr. Lee, relearning what she had forgotten. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time since her father's death had forced her to set aside her music, May wasn't just surviving. She was moving towards something, not just away from loss. The thought made her smile as she walked down the busy street, already hearing melodies in her mind, her fingers itching to play. When she reached the bus stop, her phone buzzed with a text from Kai. Well? May typed back a simple response. I said yes. Then she put away her phone and looked up at the city skyline, at the Chen Tower gleaming in the distance. Yesterday she had been a waitress who once played piano. Today, she was becoming a pianist again, and that made all the difference. The first month of May's new life passed in a blur of sore fingers, long practice sessions, and moments of both triumph and despair. Dr. Lee proved to be as demanding as her reputation suggested, pushing May to her limits in their twice-weekly lessons. Again, Dr. Lee would say, tapping her pencil against her music stand as May struggled through difficult passages. Your fingers remember more than you think. Trust them. Most days, May arrived at the Foundation's practice facilities by 7 in the morning and didn't leave until evening. The other musicians in the program, mostly younger students fresh from prestigious conservatories, regarded her with curiosity. The waitress-turned-pianist was something of an oddity, especially when they learned she still played at the restaurant every Saturday night. Why would you want to go back there? Asked Zoe, a violinist who had been training since she was 4. Isn't it beneath you now? May had smiled. It's where I found myself again. I don't think that's beneath anyone. Today marked 6 weeks since her first lesson with Dr. Lee, and May was preparing for her first formal evaluation. All foundation musicians underwent quarterly reviews to assess their progress. Those who weren't meeting expectations could lose their sponsorship. May stared at her reflection in the practice room window as evening shadows stretched across the city. Dark circles had formed under her eyes from long hours and little sleep. Her hands, once calloused from carrying trays, now bore different marks, the renewed calluses of a practicing pianist. Her phone buzzed with a text from Kai. "Dinner's ready when you get home. Don't stay too late." Their roles had shifted somewhat over the past weeks. While May still paid the bills with her foundation stipend, Kai had taken over more household responsibilities, cooking meals and handling grocery shopping between his college classes. He seemed to have grown up overnight, shouldering burdens without complaint to give her the space to pursue her music. May played through her evaluation pieces one final time, a Bach prelude and fugue that Dr. Lee had assigned to rebuild her technique, and a Chopin ballade that still gave her trouble in several passages. Tomorrow would determine whether the foundation's investment in her had been worthwhile. When she finally arrived home, she found Kai waiting with a simple dinner and encouraging words. "You've got this," he said as they ate. "You practice more than anyone I know." "Some of the others in the program have been playing non-stop since they were children," May replied. "I'm still catching up on lost time." Kai shook his head. "Stop comparing yourself to them. You have something different." "What's that?" May asked, curious. "Life experience," Kai said simply. "They've been in practice rooms their whole lives. You've been out in the world. It shows when you play." Sleep came fitfully that night and morning arrived too quickly. May dressed carefully in the new outfit she'd bought for the occasion. Simple black pants and a deep blue blouse that Diane had helped her select. "Professional but not stuffy," Diane had called it. The evaluation would take place in the Foundation's small recital hall, with Dr. Lee, Roberto Vasquez, and 2 other Foundation board members attending. Chen himself was traveling abroad on business, but would receive a detailed report. As May waited outside the hall, other musicians who had already completed their evaluations offered encouraging smiles or whispered, "Good luck." When the door finally opened and Diane called her name, May took a deep breath and walked in with her shoulders back, projecting a confidence she didn't entirely feel. The panel sat at a table facing the Steinway Concert Grand. May nodded respectfully to them before taking her place at the piano. Without preamble, she began the Bach prelude, focusing on the precise fingerwork Dr. Lee had drilled into her. The familiar pattern of notes calmed her racing heart, allowing her to settle into the music. When she transitioned to the more emotional Chopin piece, May closed her eyes briefly, recalling Dr. Lee's advice. Don't just play the notes, tell the story. The ballade had always felt to her like a narrative of loss and renewal, something she understood intimately. Her fingers moved with increasing confidence, shaping phrases that spoke of struggle and hard-won hope. As the final notes faded, May placed her hands in her lap and waited. Dr. Lee made a few notes on her tablet, then looked up. "Your Bach was technically competent," she said. "Still some unevenness in the left hand during the 16th note passages, but significantly improved from 6 weeks ago." May nodded, accepting the criticism. Roberto spoke next. "The Chopin showed real progress in your ability to shape a musical line. I'd like to hear more dynamic contrast, but the emotional understanding is there." The other board members added their observations, some positive, others pointing out areas for continued work. Finally, Dr. Lee set down her tablet. "Overall assessment, satisfactory progress. You may continue in the program." May released the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you." "There is one more matter," Dr. Lee added. "The Foundation sponsors several community concerts throughout the year. We would like you to perform in the upcoming event next month at City Hall." May blinked in surprise. "A public performance? Already?" Roberto nodded. "Nothing too demanding. Perhaps the Chopin nocturne you played at your audition. These concerts introduce our musicians to the community and potential patrons. Think of it as a stepping stone," Diane added with an encouraging smile. "A chance to get comfortable on stage again before larger opportunities." As May left the evaluation, her phone buzzed with a message from Chen. "Heard you passed with flying colors. Never doubted it. Looking forward to your City Hall debut. News traveled fast, it seemed. May texted Kai the good news, then headed to her usual practice room. The relief of passing her evaluation quickly gave way to new anxiety about the upcoming performance. It had been years since she'd played for a real audience. Restaurant patrons absorbed in their meals didn't really count. The next few weeks took on a new intensity. In addition to her regular lessons, May now worked with Roberto on performance techniques, how to approach the piano, how to acknowledge the audience, how to manage performance anxiety. Many musicians make the mistake of trying to eliminate nervousness, Roberto told her during one session. That's impossible. The goal is to channel it into your performance, to use that energy. At home, May practiced walking to the piano in the cramped living room, bowing to an imaginary audience while Kai applauded enthusiastically from the couch. You're going to be amazing, he assured her. Just don't trip over your feet like you just did. The night before the City Hall concert, May couldn't sleep at all. She lay awake, playing the piece in her mind, imagining everything that could go wrong. Forgotten passages, technical mistakes, even falling off the bench. By morning, she was exhausted but too wired to rest. When she arrived at City Hall, Diane met her at the stage door, clipboard in hand. There's been a slight change of plans, she said, leading May to the green room. Mr. Chen flew back early specifically for this event. He's invited several important guests. May's stomach dropped. Important how? The usual. Music critics, potential donors, artistic directors from various organizations. Diane must have noticed May's expression because she quickly added, "Don't worry. They're not here to judge you. This is just a community concert." But they would judge her, May knew. That was what critics did, and donors wouldn't support musicians who didn't impress them. As for artistic directors, they were always evaluating, always looking for talent. Through a crack in the stage curtain, May peered out at the filling auditorium. She spotted Chen in the front row, surrounded by elegant people in expensive clothes. Several rows back, she saw a familiar face. Kai had arrived, looking slightly out of place in his best shirt but beaming with pride. The stage manager approached. 5 minutes, Ms. Lin. May nodded, suddenly unable to speak. Her hands felt cold, her mouth dry. What had she been thinking? 6 weeks of intensive training couldn't make up for 8 years away from music. She was going to embarrass herself, disappoint Chen, waste everyone's time. Nervous. The voice belonged to Zoe, the young violinist who would be performing after her. Terrified, May admitted. Zoe smiled. Me too, every time. She pulled a small tin from her pocket. Peppermint. Helps with dry mouth. Want one? The simple gesture of kindness steadied May somehow. She accepted the mint with a grateful smile. Thanks. Remember, Zoe added, most people out there can't even play Happy Birthday correctly. They're already impressed that you can make music at all. When the stage manager finally called her name, May walked out with her chin up, focusing on the piano rather than the audience. The lights were bright, hiding most faces beyond the first few rows, but she could still see Chen watching her intently. She approached the piano, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands in her lap for a moment, centering herself. I belong here, she told herself. This is who I am. She began to play, the familiar Chopin nocturne flowing from her fingers. For the first few measures, she was intensely aware of every note, every nuance, her body tense with concentration. But gradually something shifted. The music took over, carrying her along as it had during her restaurant performances. May forgot about the critics, the donors, even Chen himself. She played for her parents, who had sacrificed to give her lessons as a child. She played for Kai, who had never stopped believing in her talent. She played for her younger self, who had thought this dream was forever lost. When the final note faded, there was a moment of silence, that precious space between the end of music and the beginning of response. Then came applause, genuine and appreciative. May rose and bowed as Roberto had taught her, a smile breaking across her face. As she left the stage, she passed Zoe waiting in the wings. That was beautiful, the younger woman whispered. So honest. The rest of the concert passed in a blur as other foundation musicians performed. Afterward, at the reception, May found herself surrounded by well-wishers, including several of Chen's special guests who asked about her background and training. She answered their questions simply, without hiding her unusual path to the foundation. Most remarkable, said an older man who introduced himself as the director of the regional symphony, We're always looking for fresh talent for our Young Artists series. Perhaps Ms. Wu could arrange an audition. Later, as the crowd thinned, Chen found May by the refreshment table. You did well, he said, his usual directness softened by genuine approval. I'm glad I didn't let you keep pouring wine for the rest of your life. May laughed. So am I. Thank you for seeing something in me that night. I didn't give you this opportunity, Chen corrected. I simply removed the obstacles. The talent was always yours. On the bus ride home, with Kai chattering excitedly beside her about all the important people he'd seen at the reception, May gazed out at the city lights with a sense of wonder. 6 months ago, she had been a waitress with buried dreams and a future mapped out in practical necessities. Now, possibility stretched before her like an open road. There would still be hard work, still be moments of doubt. The path of a musician was never easy, but tonight had shown her that second chances were real, that buried talents could be unearthed, that life could open in unexpected ways when you were brave enough to step through new doors. Earth to May, Kai said, waving his hand in front of her face. Where'd you go just now? May smiled, returning to the present moment. Just thinking about what comes next. What does come next? Kai asked. May thought about the regional symphony director, about Dr. Lee's hints that she might be ready for competition preparation, about the pieces she was eager to learn. I'm not entirely sure, she admitted, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to find out. 1 year had passed since that fateful night when Anthony Chen had first pointed at May and demanded she play the restaurant's piano. Sometimes it felt like a lifetime ago. Other days it seemed like just yesterday she had been balancing plates instead of musical phrases. Today marked an important milestone, her final quarterly review with the foundation before her initial 1-year sponsorship concluded. The foundation's board would decide whether to extend her support for another year or conclude their investment in her career. May arrived early at Chen Tower, taking the now familiar elevator to the music floor. The hallways were quiet this morning, most practice rooms still empty. She set her bag down in her usual space and ran her fingers over the keys of the Steinway she had come to think of as hers. So much had changed in a year. Her technique had improved dramatically under Dr. Lee's strict guidance. She had performed in 6 foundation concerts, each more significant than the last. 3 months ago, she had even competed in a regional piano competition, placing 3rd, not winning but respectable enough that several people had taken notice. Most importantly, she had reclaimed her identity as a musician. The monthly stipend had given her and Kai financial stability. Her brother was thriving in his 2nd year of college, his health steadily improving with proper medical care, and yet, as she began her warm-up scales, May couldn't shake her nervousness about today's review. The foundation didn't sponsor musicians indefinitely. Eventually, they were expected to launch independent careers, making room for new talent to receive support. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Zoe. Good luck today. They'd be crazy not to keep you. Over the past year, what had begun as cautious collegiality with the other musicians had blossomed into genuine friendship. Zoe, in particular, had become a close confidant, helping May navigate the often complicated social dynamics of the classical music world. At precisely 10 o'clock, Diane appeared at the practice room door. They're ready for you now. May followed her to the recital hall where the board waited. Unlike previous reviews where she had played specified repertoire, today she would perform pieces of her own choosing, a statement about her artistic direction and growth. She had selected a challenging program, Bach's Italian Concerto, a Beethoven sonata, and most daringly a contemporary piece by a young composer she had discovered. It was an unconventional choice that had raised Dr. Lee's eyebrows, but May had stood firm. This piece spoke to her in a way that much of the standard repertoire didn't. The board members sat in their usual places, Dr. Lee with her tablet, Roberto with his thoughtful expression, and 2 others whose opinions had come to matter greatly to May. Chen himself sat slightly apart, less a board member than a proud sponsor. Whenever you're ready, Diane said, taking her seat. May approached the piano with the confidence of someone who had done this many times now. Her posture was relaxed but focused as she began the Bach, its intricate counterpoint flowing from her fingers with a clarity that would have been impossible a year ago. The Beethoven followed, passionate and dynamic. May lost herself in the emotional landscape of the piece, barely aware of her audience as she navigated its technical challenges. Finally, she paused before beginning the contemporary work, making brief eye contact with Dr. Lee, whose expression remained neutral. The piece began softly, almost tentatively, before building into complex, sometimes dissonant patterns that required both technical precision and emotional commitment. May had been drawn to its blend of classical structure and modern sensibilities, music that felt like it belonged to her time and experience. When she finished, the silence in the room felt different than it had at previous evaluations. Less assessing, more contemplative, Dr. Lee was the first to speak. "Your technical progress has been remarkable," she said. "The Bach showed maturity and understanding, the Beethoven genuine passion." She paused. "The Yoon piece was an interesting choice." Roberto leaned forward. "I found it compelling. Unexpected, certainly, but performed with conviction. You've developed your own voice, which is what we hope to see in our musicians." The discussion continued, each board member offering perspectives on her playing and development. Finally, Chen spoke up. "The question before us isn't about Ms. Lin's talent or progress, which are evident. It's about next steps. Where do you see yourself a year from now, May?" May had anticipated this question and had spent weeks considering her answer. "I've been thinking about that a lot," she began. "The foundation has given me an incredible opportunity to rebuild my skills and confidence. I'll always be grateful for that." She took a breath before continuing. "But I've realized something important this year. While I love performing the classical repertoire, what excites me most is bringing music to people who might not otherwise experience it." She told them about her Saturday nights at the restaurant, how she had begun incorporating more diverse music, not just classical pieces but film scores, jazz standards, even thoughtfully arranged popular songs. She described the connections she'd made with regular diners who had never set foot in a concert hall, but had developed a genuine appreciation for her playing. "I want to continue growing as a classical pianist," she concluded, "but I also want to explore ways to make this art form more accessible. I've been speaking with the community outreach director at the Regional Symphony about developing programs for schools in underserved areas, and I've been composing some of my own music, pieces that bridge classical techniques with contemporary influences." The board members exchanged glances. This wasn't the typical career trajectory they encouraged. Most foundation musicians aimed for traditional performance careers, concert halls, recordings, competitions. "That's an unconventional path," Dr. Lee said carefully. "Yes," May acknowledged, "but it feels authentic to me. My journey to music has been unconventional from the start." She smiled slightly. "I was a waitress who happened to play piano, remember?" After further discussion, the board asked May to wait outside while they deliberated. She sat in the hallway both nervous and strangely calm. She had spoken her truth regardless of the outcome. 20 minutes later, Diane called her back in. Chen was standing now, a rare smile on his usually serious face. "We've made our decision," he announced. "The foundation will extend your sponsorship for one more year, with some adjustments to the standard program." Dr. Lee explained the details. "You'll continue your technical training with me, but with reduced lesson frequency. We're also allocating funds for you to develop a community music program in partnership with the Regional Symphony, and we've arranged for you to study composition with Professor Huang at the conservatory." Roberto added, "Your final project will be a recital featuring both traditional repertoire and your original compositions, with a focus on accessibility without artistic compromise." May was stunned. "Thank you. This is more than I hoped for." "It's an experiment," Chen said frankly. "The foundation typically focuses on traditional career paths, but your perspective has merit. Music needs innovators as well as preservers of tradition." As May left the tower that afternoon, she felt lighter than she had in months. The pressure of fitting herself into a predetermined mold had been lifted, replaced by the chance to forge her own path with institutional support. Her phone rang as she reached the street. It was Kai. "How did it go?" he asked, the excitement in his voice obvious even through the phone. "They're extending my sponsorship," May told him, but with a twist. "They're letting me develop my own program, Kai. Something that brings music to kids who might never get to hear it otherwise." "That's perfect for you," Kai exclaimed. "We need to celebrate. Dinner tonight at that new place near campus?" "Can't tonight," May replied. Saturday, remember? I'm playing at the restaurant. Right, I forgot. Tomorrow, then? After they hung up, May headed toward the bus stop, but on impulse changed direction. The walk to the Crystal Room would take 30 minutes, but she had time, and the late autumn sunshine felt good on her face. As she walked, May reflected on the winding path that had brought her here, the grief that had forced her to abandon music, the years of practical survival, the chance encounter that had reawakened dormant dreams, the hard work of the past year, rebuilding skills and discovering new aspirations. When she arrived at the restaurant, it was just opening for the evening. The manager spotted her through the window and waved her in. "May, you're early today," he greeted her. "Everything okay?" "Everything's great," she assured him. "I just wanted some quiet time with the piano before the dinner rush." He gestured toward the gleaming grand piano that now occupied the space where she had first played a year ago. "All yours. The first reservation isn't for another hour." May settled onto the bench, adjusting it to her preferred height. This piano wasn't quite as fine as the ones at the foundation, but it held special meaning for her. It had been the bridge between her past and present, the instrument that had given her a second chance. She began to play softly, improvising around a melody that had been forming in her mind for weeks, something that might eventually become one of her compositions. As the notes floated through the empty restaurant, May smiled to herself. A year ago, she had been a waitress who once played piano. 6 months ago, she had become a pianist again, grateful but uncertain. Today, she was becoming something new, a musician finding her unique voice and place in the world. The restaurant staff moved quietly around her, setting tables and preparing for the evening service. Once she had been one of them, invisible to the patrons she served. Now she created the atmosphere that welcomed those same guests. Her music the first thing they noticed upon arriving. Later that evening, as the restaurant filled with diners, May played a mix of classical pieces and more contemporary works. Between sets, a young waitress approached the piano hesitantly. "I just wanted to say, I'm studying voice at the community college," she said, her voice barely audible over the dinner conversations. "Hearing you play here every week, it makes me think maybe I don't have to choose between paying rent and making music. Maybe there's a way to do both." May smiled, recognizing her younger self in the woman's uncertain hope. "What's your name?" "Lucia." "Well, Lucia, sometimes the path isn't straight, but that doesn't mean you won't reach your destination." May gestured toward the restaurant around them. "Sometimes the detours lead exactly where you're meant to go." As Lucia returned to her duties, May began her next set with a piece she had been working on for weeks, her own arrangement of a popular song, reimagined with classical influences. She noticed several diners pausing their conversations to listen more intently, some nodding in recognition of the familiar melody, transformed into something new yet accessible. This was what she wanted to do: build bridges between musical worlds, create spaces where art could be both elevated and welcoming. The journey ahead would have its challenges, but for the first time May felt she was truly playing her own song, and it was a melody worth hearing.